Hello, my name is Maria Fernanda, and I'm the host of IOScholarships Superheroes Podcast.
Easy, easy, so easy.
This podcast is only a 10-minute podcast that highlights the best kept secret of IO scholars, job recruiters, and community influencers. And most importantly, we want to provide you financial resources to go to college debt-free and become financially savvy. Today, we have a very special guest that we had 2 years ago. His name is Nelson Badillo, and he's an aerospace and mechanical engineer who won a scholarship at NASA and also Harvard, where he's doing his PhD at such a young age. And he strived to find solutions to real-world problems by utilizing soft robotics and biologically inspired systems. He's passionate to improving the use of robots in areas such as disaster relief, health, and construction. I'm thrilled he's returning to IOScholarships Superheroes Podcast to talk about his amazing career milestone. Welcome, Nelson, and thank you again for joining our show.
Hi, Maria. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Well, I interviewed you over 2 years ago when you were at Notre Dame and pursuing aerospace and mechanical engineering. And now you're at Harvard and doing your PhD and in conjunction working at NASA again. So, wow, so much to talk about. Share with us more about your journey.
Sure. So my name is Nelson Badillo, and I'm originally from a very small town in Puerto Rico called Moca. And I grew up with just a passion for engineering and robotics. And I always wanted to pursue this as a career. I was able to get involved with robotics early on in middle school and high school. And it got me really passionate into this area of system design and how you could use robots to do interesting and useful things. And after high school, I went to the University of Notre Dame. I was very lucky to get a full ride scholarship there. And while I was at Notre Dame, I got more involved with robotics research and specifically soft robotics. And soft robotics was really fascinating because it was completely different of my perspective of what robotics was. When you think about robots, you think about these bulky and rigid systems that can do really amazing things. Like, for example, you have these backflipping robots from Boston Dynamics, and you have the Mars rovers. But they aren't very adaptable. And what soft robotics is trying to do is take a new approach in the design space of traditional rigid robots by making systems that are passively compliant. So you don't need to tell them what to do in order for them to adapt to the environment. So it requires less of a control complexity. So I got really involved in that in undergrad, and I ended up joining a research lab and was able to work on projects and also publish on these soft robots that utilized air pressure to traverse confined environments and go up pipes and even perform endoscopies inside humans. So I thought that was really fascinating, and I wanted to continue that. So I was really passionate about doing a graduate degree, and in the meantime, while I was still at Notre Dame, I had this amazing opportunity to do an internship at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where I got really involved in space robotics and exploration. I worked on a new mission for exploring the cloud layer of Venus. And after working on that for a while, I realized that NASA has been approaching robotic exploration from a traditional perspective, from using these large rigid robots to perform sampling in extreme environments. So I thought, wait, what if I could combine my love for soft robotics with space exploration? So when I was applying to graduate school, I found this very incredible fellowship called the NASA Space Technology Graduate Research Fellowship that allows you to develop a unique mission concept in conjunction with your graduate degree. And I applied to a bunch of graduate degrees, and I got accepted to many of them best schools such as MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Princeton, University of Pennsylvania, and Harvard. And I ended up choosing Harvard. And after choosing Harvard, I ended up getting this external NASA fellowship. And I've been working on this project for over a year now, and I'm now here at NASA to work with their engineers hands-on to make it a more full-fledged project and develop it more.
Well, I'm always very impressed by your career because you mentioned the last time I interviewed you 2 years ago that your family were big supporters when you were 9 years old to go and explore like a robotic program in Puerto Rico. And then, what motivated you? You mentioned about how Hurricane Maria impacted your like kind of perspective of how robots really can be helpful for disaster relief. And you talked that you developed these soft robots, and I always align it to, okay, hopefully Nelson will do and I know that you are doing an amazing job in the intersection of human and robotics, and that is fascinating to me because for you to be able to develop soft robots that can really save lives, then it's a bigger perspective of how climate change is impacting everybody, and you are not able only to impact your native Puerto Rico, but also you are doing great things worldwide. And I'm so glad that NASA and Harvard recognized your talent because you're so young and so motivated, and you always have actually the support of your family, your mother and your father, that were there for you. Now, who are your biggest cheerleaders at Harvard and NASA?
So, first of all, my biggest cheerleader ever is my dad. I talked about this last time I was here, but my dad and also my mother, shout out to Nelson and Aitza, they really supported me from the very beginning. When I was really young, with really not that many resources in my small town in Puerto Rico, they pushed me to seek out these opportunities, and if there weren't any available, then we would create some ourselves. So they're still my biggest cheerleaders. But I would also have to give a big shout out to my PhD advisor, Robert Howe at Harvard in the Biorobotics lab, and also Matt Robinson here at the NASA Jet Propulsion lab. They have been supporting me throughout my entire PhD, over a year of research now, and they will continue to do so until I graduate.
Visit IOScholarships as we have access to thousands of STEM scholarships based on your unique ethnic background, waiting for you today. Some of them only require 2.5 GPA and no essay. Remember, the more you apply, the more chances you have to win. Apply today. That's so inspiring because you need a community that supports you, that believe in a Latino like you, so young and motivated, and your passion paired with your skill set is something that it will scale worldwide because you are the innovator of the future. And actually I was wondering, in terms of before you gave us some tips to the IO scholars of how to win scholarships, and now that you get these big internships and potentially, and I'm sure, big career opportunities from companies that are following your innovations, I was wondering, which tips will you give to students, for example, that wants to get into working for NASA or Boston Dynamics or Jeff Bezos Foundation?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question because many people don't know about the opportunities for funded research or work out there. So I had no idea that NASA gave these graduate fellowships that are incredibly generous and pay for opportunities from, like, for example, go to work at a NASA center. So I would give the advice of just try to seek out opportunities wherever they may be and use your current situation as a stepping stone for the next big step in your career. So when I was interning here back in 2022, I utilized my connections here at NASA Jet Propulsion Lab to get more information about this NASA fellowship. I had no idea that this existed, and while I was here, I was able to learn more about it, and I noticed that I was a very good fit for it. However, I was still not that confident in going for and applying because it's a very difficult fellowship to obtain. Usually, it's people who have been in their second year or third year in their PhDs would apply for it, and I was just an undergrad. But I still had the courage to draw up an entire research plan of how my idea could be beneficial to NASA. And I was really passionate about it. I connected it with my previous experiences working in soft robotics at JPL, and also my desire to use the knowledge that I gained from my experience to create robots for disaster response and really make a bigger impact, and connect all of those that led to a very successful application. They saw that I was really passionate and that I had potential. So what I would recommend is just seek those opportunities out. Don't be afraid of rejection, because if you end up being rejected, you can always try again. And if you get it, then fantastic, it will lead to great things. And the other thing is just be genuine and passionate about what your interests are.
Yes, and you mentioned that you are very interested in actually future space exploration as a gateway to Mars. So tell us a little bit more about.
Yes. So it's right now the current state of space exploration is at a very interesting inflection point where there's a lot of interest in the public sector and the private sector to explore the solar system, specifically Mars. And the way that we're going to get to Mars is through the moon. So when we put astronauts on the moon in 1969 through the Apollo program, we learned many, many things. And now we want to go back with the efforts of Artemis and also efforts in the private sector. We want to use the moon as a gateway for the rest of the solar system, because the moon doesn't have atmosphere, it has less gravity, and will be much easier to launch payloads and also much cheaper than from Earth. So in order to get to Mars, we first need to get to the moon. But to get to the moon, there's so many questions that we need to answer first. And big questions that we're trying to answer here at the Jet Propulsion Lab is, first of all, what is the mineral composition of the moon? Can we support a habitable settlement over long term at the moon? And performing geochronology tasks and knowing how the moon evolved. Those are big questions that we still don't know, and there are a lot of efforts going on to know these. And by learning about the moon, we'll also learn something about ourselves, about the Earth, because things that happen in the moon could serve as analogs to just the evolution of Earth.
I could talk with you for hours because it's so fascinating what you are saying about our origins and how we can learn from space exploration about the civilization and where we are moving forward to. And you're involved in all these great projects. But I know that, first of all, I want to thank you because you have been very humble always, and that will take you further in life. And that is because you have parents, as you said, as mentors and great people that believe in you. I'm one of your biggest cheerleaders also. And the thing that I admire the most about you is that you want to give back to your community where you were born. You mentioned to me previously, like, that your long-term goal is hopefully to go back to Puerto Rico and, put together a robotic club and inspire more students in STEM in Puerto Rico to pursue your career, y si se puede. And, I was wondering, tell us a little bit more about, those future long-term goals that they're so related to your heart and your origins.
Yeah, I was so inspired by the early work in robotics that I did in middle school and high school. And I remember very well how difficult it was to find these opportunities, specifically in the rural area where I lived in the mountains of Puerto Rico. And having access to those robotics programs early on put me towards a trajectory towards the career that I have right now. And my goal really is to get an education, get all the preparation that I need so I can go back to Puerto Rico and give back to the community, to my community who are filled with innovators, thinkers, people who can do amazing things but currently don't have the opportunities to do so and pursue them. And I want to take all the opportunities I've had available to me and create a robotics program that allows low-income students from rural communities like mine to gain access to this knowledge, to become agents of change and proliferate a sense of community and innovation throughout the island, Caribbean, the US, and the world. And there's a lot of talent, specifically in Puerto Rico and rest of Latin America, that could really use more opportunities because there's great people.
Yes, and access to opportunities is key. Access to scholarship, to internships, to people that believe in you, and you're such a great role model for more Latinos in STEM. So I really appreciate that you were part of this podcast. And from Venus to beautiful Puerto Rico, the sky is not your limit, Nelson. So I'm looking forward to your great inventions. And this concludes our episodes. And again, Orgullo Latino. Thank you, Nelson, for being part of our show.
I just want to say that thank you so much, Maria, for the opportunity, and to anyone who's watching or listening, si se puede. Doesn't matter where you come from or the challenges that you faced, you can do it.
Thank you for that inspirational message. And this concludes our episode. And for our IOScholar listeners, please make sure that a free way to support us is to subscribe to our podcast and share this information with your family and friends who need this type of opportunities and inspiration role models to continue their careers in STEM. See you next time. Muchas gracias, Nelson.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.